Good now, revolutionaries, and welcome to Rising Up After Dark. Well, Alex, we're not even one drink in, and I have already messed up the title to me. Wouldn't you know it, man?
Starting with a quump. It's not a commanding start for you.
But I will tell you, I do have a couple of feathers in my cap from you. I honored your request to let you know that in addition to the sound, we have got Aishwary Gupta immortalized forever on the soundboard, letting people know they are, in fact, correct.
Yes.
If you don't know Aishwary Gupta, he is the holder of the biggest title in crypto. He is the head of exchanges, payments, and DeFi at Polygon, and the head of business development for India over there.
And RWAs and exchanges.
Oh my gosh. Oh, I can't believe we just talked to him 2 days ago. We talked to so many people. And that's the best part of it. I absolutely love it. He's immortalized forever on the soundboard. And I also have for you this one, Alex, in case you need it. Oh, where'd it go? Correct. Oh no, I lost stall. But you know.
Correct is the good one. And William, for context, he had talked about this idea of a credit card, like an on-chain credit card, and I was sort of like voicing my excitement at the possibility of having like RWA and tokenized integrated into a credit card loyalty program, wherein you could have way better and way cooler incentives. And then of course I was saying I cannot wait for an airport lounge that is themed crypto. And,
Polygon Airport Lounge.
He listened to my whole monologue about all these things that would be just like so cool to do, and he looked at me and he just went, correct. And I was like, okay, you got to give me something else. But it was sort of like a world domination moment. It was like, you know, anything is possible, and you know, if the liquidity comes, you can get this flywheel, and he just said, correct. Like he just knew he was dropping the mic.
Right.
You know, if you're tuning in to see William for the first time over on YouTube, then we're going to introduce him in a second. I do want to invite you, if you're listening on TikTok or to the recording in podcast land, hello. We hope wherever you are in the future, your candles are green. If you want to see William's face, come over to YouTube, check out the video, and we will have the screen share going on too. But before we get too far into the night in the discussion, William, do you want to take a second to let folks know who you are, what you do?
Sure. I guess so. A venture capitalist for many years. I co-founded the first consumer internet venture capital fund, Idea Lab Capital Partners, in the mid-90s. We did a whole bunch of great consumer internet deals. And I also invested in and took active roles in several different types of video game companies, particularly video game businesses like marketplaces that allow people to buy and sell video game virtual items, running the two largest ones created for that. And then, like a lot of other people in the video game virtual item business in, what is it now, 2011? I got very interested in Bitcoin because my partner was very involved. And from there, I stopped doing essentially everything else I had been working on and just worked on blockchain and initially, of course, just Bitcoin. That's all there was. But then all the other tangential businesses, the infrastructure companies, obviously stablecoins like Tether, video game focused blockchains like Wax, and participated in a lot of ICOs and crowd sales. My partner and I were the second largest buyers in the Ethereum crowd sale. We had been deeply involved in a company that preceded Ethereum called Mastercoin. And Mastercoin was the first attempt to put an intelligent layer on a blockchain, a smart contract on a blockchain. Just picked the wrong blockchain at the time. We made essentially a layer 2 on Bitcoin. And the Bitcoin people didn't understand why you would want intelligence in your blockchain, so it didn't work so well. But Mastercoin did have one, shining moment, which is it hatched Tether. And it was Tether was exclusively on on Mastercoin, I want to say until about 2018. And then, of course, we started tokenizing tokens and allowing them to be on a bunch of other chains. So, I've probably done, 30 or so investments or incubations in the crypto space. And, well over 100 tokens we've bought, crowd sale tokens or ICOs, and seen all of the drama from Silk Road and the attempts by governments around the world to ban Bitcoin, to ban Tether, to ban NFTs and so forth. And it looks like right now there's, some a relaxation of a lot of that oppression of crypto-based businesses now that Trump is in office. And so hopefully the next few years, things are better, and they look like they will be.
So that's something we wanted to talk to you about a little bit tonight. And we definitely want to talk about entrepreneurship, like you were saying before we got on the stream. But first, I want to explain to people who are tuning in for the first time or just need a refresher that we have a little game we play here on Rise Up After Dark. This is the show where once a week we let our hair down, we BYOB, DYOR with our expert guests and friends. And Alex, for the first time in a long time, I actually am drinking a beer tonight. It is a Heineken Light with just 90 calories, but the same great taste. The show is not sponsored by Heineken, but I guess it should be. I don't know if we're allowed to drink on screen on YouTube. I just realized that, but cheers. And let me tell you.
Soda.
It's soda. That's right. Heineken soda. It's so light, it doesn't matter. If you want to play along with us, then you're in the right place, because every time you hear this sound, it means that somebody speaking has earned a point, like William did for being brilliant enough to pivot into Tether from Mastercoin. And every time you hear this sound, it means somebody has lost a point, like all the Bitcoiners who just couldn't quite get what smart contracts and building on top of a layer would do. So play along, and you could win a fabulous prize. In fact, one of the premium members from our community is winning a prize tonight. Woohoo. Alex, will you please do me the honor of telling me who that person is?
Yes, but first, I need your help.
Oh, wait.
Stall. Oh, that's it. That's what it was.
What do you need my help with?
I need you to pick a number between 1 and 83.
William, you do the honors.
Any number.
1 and what was the last number?
83.
82.
Ooh, okay. I like the way you think. That makes my job so much easier. Thank you.
And the winner could be
YMAX.
All right, YMAX, congratulations.
I am a big fan of this.
If somebody gets enough points, an arbitrary number I'll decide later, then you, my friend, will win a fabulous prize, maybe a USDC to $2 shirt, maybe a morning show mug.
I don't know how to sell this
or
thing.
Something else. But
sell the
it
mug.
will be fabulous. It will be
Mug
fabulous.
is a honeypot. It's a scam.
And it's watch out for that.
It's the perfect time to buy.
William Watson is taking the night off, but he's still on the soundboard. So, okay, there are just a couple stories we wanted to get your take on, because we thought you'd have a really solid take. And I want to start with this story over here that is, I don't know if you saw, William, since you're on the internet, the drama between Elon and Trump last week.
Oh, is there drama between those two?
No.
Yeah, apparently there's a lot going on, and the TLDR is it ended up with Elon recently, after deleting all of their tweets back and forth, as if it never happened, saying, is it time to create a new political party in America that actually represents the 80% in the middle? And, you don't have to get too political on it, but I think there are a lot of interesting perspectives on, like, the richest man in the world at this or that time, and arguably the most powerful man in the world, going kind of head to head in a very public place. And Elon, who is such a supporter of the president, that seems like kind of the number one rule is, like, don't fight the king unless you're going to win. And could you see something like this? The crypto markets are up and down all the time, and markets generally are having a moment right now. But this is I don't know. I didn't have it on my bingo card for 2025 that we were going to have to deal with that kind of stuff. But alas, life goes on,
I thought it was should have been on your bingo card for 2026.
Yeah.
I never thought this strange partnership would last. And
it is a strange partnership, honestly, because he used to be a real Trump detractor, and all of a sudden,
yes, And, once you, I guess, achieve a certain amount and feel kind of immune to any kind of criticism, that's both Trump and Elon. You can very quickly, spoil a relationship by being butthurt and not doing what most of us do, which is we say, yeah, that was a rude comment that, Aunt Jeannie made at Thanksgiving, but I kind of got to keep the family aligned and together, so I'm going to forget about it. Most of us have this impulse control feature in our minds. We only lose it when we've decided there's nothing left to save. So I didn't think it was going to implode in 6 months, but I felt like it was certainly their relationship was something was going to happen. I still, by the way, have no idea what that was. And maybe they don't know what it was. Elon seemed to be frustrated with the tax legislation, but have we ever seen anybody go, I am so angry about the tax? It's not really something you get butthurt about, right? You might be like, oh, I don't like this, but it's more analytical than it is emotional. So
plus, it wasn't a surprise. It could not have been a surprise. No one could have been surprised by what was in that bill.
No. And
same shit from last time.
Yeah. So but it's I'm from LA. So there's a lot of relationships that fire on all cylinders for the first month.
Yeah.
And then just like that, they part ways, never to talk again. I kind of felt like it was one of those, but like everybody else, I was amused at things that mostly I think that Elon was saying, because I don't think Trump said much. But he couldn't have won if it wasn't for me. You never want to say that. You want your ally to say that, right? You don't want to say, oh, he's the handsomest guy in the room. You want someone else to say that.
Right, exactly.
Right? So, I thought it was strange. But I also could see in 6 months, they're buddies again.
Yeah. It kind of seems like they buried the hatchet. I saw another tweet somewhere. Trump said, "I wish him well," which is kind of like his famous parting remark when he's like, "We're not gonna work together anymore, but I wish him well."
Yeah, I will ask you guys because I don't follow this super closely. But did any of you hear what caused the dissolution of their great partnership?
Great is a stretch, I would say. I think it was the fact that Elon spent oodles of money to help him get elected, and then slept on a floor in a government office for a long time with a bunch of unpaid teenagers dismantling the government, only to have a budget bill come around that was an increase in spending and surprise, the government's going to print money. And also there were some really unfriendly things to, I guess, electric energy or electric vehicles.
Yes.
When you buy a president, you expect to get there were a couple of policy decisions I think he got slighted for. And I understand that.
Yeah. That would normally be the stuff you would discuss behind closed doors, though. It's like, hey, can you put a little bit more in there for the electric vehicle stuff?
For the boys back home. Yeah.
I like your theory that he was like, hey, I'm going to fix the government, which, maybe only Elon would think that's possible. I guess I'm too jaded. I don't think you can fix it.
You'd be in there who did this shit?
Come on. And I never thought he could keep going the way he was going because he does have public companies, and those companies need to be managed. And as soon as you start getting problems with the stock, the investors start saying, "Why are you messing around? Doing whatever you're doing, but you're not paying attention to the business." So he either had to step down, or he had to come back.
Yeah. Solano in our comments says Elon freaked out about the big, beautiful bill. And Homer says, just dueling narcissistic egos. That's what happened.
Yeah, it might be more. It might be along those lines.
To be honest,
but-
I mean, it was a weird position to take for Elon, because what he did was completely 180 on the overwhelming majority of his customer base through Tesla.
So I agree with that. I thought that was very hard to imagine if you were a Tesla shareholder.
Well, and it's just like, okay, why do you take a risk like that in a business? It's because you think that whatever you stand to gain by what you stand to lose is going to be greater. That didn't happen. Stock price cratered. And so I think a lot of this bickering was meant to see if he could re-endear himself with his original customer base and fix some of his public image, because he realized that the stock price was not coming back. There was no real effect. I mean, how much money actually got saved by whatever got cut? Not much.
No.
And then all of it was completely undone by the gargantuan size of this bill. And so you tarnished your image with your primary customer base to maybe get some kind of benefit, because a lot of the agencies that got gutted they had open investigations into his companies. So there was that. So he accomplished what he wanted to through that agency that he got to be in charge of. And then it was like, okay, now it's time to repair my public image, because like you said, William, I kind of always figured that thing had a shelf life, especially when you go from being that polar opposite to that, allied that quickly at the cost of your customer base. It's just a weird position to be in as a business person.
I always, I was in California for a long time. Seeing these people who were like, I love Tesla's, not because the vehicle does what they want it to do, but because, it's, it's part of my philosophy and my life goal to fix the climate, whatever. I always thought, wow, that's risky to align yourself philosophically with some company. The company is going to do what's right for, the profits of the business. You shouldn't get too cozy with the company. And the way I saw all around LA, Teslas with stickers that said, I don't support Elon. I thought that was kind of amusing as well.
Yeah, here too. Saw them all over the place. Almost every Tesla that I saw driving around. And
probably my favorite.
I'm in South Georgia.
I don't know if you saw this one, but somebody had a really appropriate picture last week of a Tesla on fire crashing into a Trump Tower location.
I remember that. That was a big one. That was crazy.
So that about sums it up. Honestly, it'll be a different story next week, and we'll be talking about something else. And like you said, William, maybe they'll be friends again. Who knows? It might align their interest to work together.
Yeah,
probably will.
I do want to segue a little bit, because William, you mentioned some IPO stuff, and Evan, I have to share this. I don't think I mentioned this on our phone call earlier today, but I was at my favorite smoothie restaurant on Tybee, talking to the owner, and he asked me, he might be here, he might be hanging out, Miles, if you're there. He was like, hey, are you familiar with Circle? And I was like, yo, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, a little bit. And he's like, yeah, I managed to catch that IPO. Bought the stock at $28. And I was like, holy shit, what is that right now? And because trading had been halted or whatever, it's trading at about 117 right now. And
the valuation is up from, it's up at like 23 billion right now from what,
I wanted to get your take on that, William, just because, one of the things that we talk about a lot with market caps as they relate to crypto is the difference between evaluating a crypto-based business via market cap of a cryptocurrency and traditional business valuation, being significantly more conservative than that when you look at a stock price compared to revenue and earnings and all this kind of stuff. And given Circle's actual revenue, and then the hype around the IPO, the fact that Gemini is the next rumored or looking at, did they file IPO, in the near future that would be a crypto company? I don't know. I'm just curious to see what you think about that, because I'm thinking it's kind of wild, and I don't know how they can support that valuation for that long.
Yeah, well, I used to think that.
Yeah, that's true.
Many years ago, and then I saw companies, never turn a profit for 15 years, and still keep going up, right? Frankly, what we were just talking about, Tesla, it's very hard for companies that make physical products to maintain high margins unless they have some extraordinary set of conditions that make them special because they've locked everyone else out, maybe like Apple, but it's very hard to do. So Circle, of course, that didn't surprise me at all because in the last 12 months, Wall Street people have started to understand what a freaking stablecoin is, right? And everybody knows that Tether is extraordinarily profitable with almost no employees. So you could talk all about, well, but what's their long-term competitive advantage and whatever. I don't know, but the reality is that all of the world's major economies will tokenize their currency. It may take 10 years, might take 15 years, but it's going to happen. And Circle was really number 2 behind Tether. And Circle, originated in the United States. It was able to acquire banking, something the Wall Streeters will never understand how fucking hard it was to get a bank to work with you for any crypto company, let alone tokenizing the dollar, because the damn government agencies kept trying to shut it down. They kept trying to say, you're doing something bad, even though there was no law against what they were doing. So it's a sort of business Wall Street loves because it has the potential to be infinitely scalable, right? You could basically tokenize all the US currency,
right?
And trillions and trillions and trillions. And even if you're getting a tiny piece of that from investing those deposits, it could be really profitable. So I actually think it's appropriately valued. If it doubled from here, that wouldn't surprise me.
Wow.
Okay. But I think it's appropriately valued right now. And what we don't know is what happens when there's 10,000 stablecoins. I think there'll be 10,000. That might take 10 years, but every major company should have its own stablecoin. There's almost, all you have to do is look at how much you transact cross-border as a company. And there's a lot of cross-border commerce in a $100 trillion annual global economy. Maybe it's 25 trillion is cross-border. Yeah. All of that, is settled with different currencies. And what makes stablecoins so valuable to humanity is that it takes away $1 trillion of profits captured every year by about 5,000 global financial institutions that are licensed by their governments to exchange currencies. And since biblical times, money changers have been hated because they seem to get a lot of profit for what they do because they're granted that right by the government. And so for anyone listening here, all you have to understand is that you now, with the stablecoin, can keep the payment you receive from some foreign entity in the currency that entity had. So, you're buying something from Germany, you get euros.
Sure.
You cannot keep euros. And when I say you, I mean 99.9% of Americans aren't allowed to hold euros, because to do that, you would have to have a euro-denominated bank account, and Americans aren't allowed to have bank accounts outside of America. Now, there'll be somebody who says, that's not true. I have a bank account, blah, blah, blah. You are one of a tiny number of people. Countries don't let their citizens have bank accounts outside of their country. And next to global terrorists, the next most hated people on earth are US passport holders trying to get a bank account in another country. Other countries can't stand Americans getting bank accounts outside of America because
I had no experience with this. I had no idea.
Oh, you don't? Yeah.
I
No.
don't. Alex probably does.
Yes.
Yeah. It's and you probably there would be no reason for you to. Unless you've been in crypto, you would not know how unbearably hard it is to get a bank account in another country. It just doesn't happen. And so now you don't need to, though. And now when that German person sends you euros, you can hold those euros in this synthetic version and then trade it for another currency, because virtually all, Tether or USDC, those are great stablecoins. So you'll be able to convert that stablecoin into a myriad of other tokens if you want, ultimately get the native currency you desire. But for many companies, they would prefer to hold on to, some quantity of 5 or 6 currencies and not pay that stupid currency conversion costs. Think of another industry. I don't know if there is one globally that every year makes $1 trillion in profits. I don't think there is one.
We can find out, but I don't know.
But that is what the foreign, the FX, currency exchange industry collects. And it's the hidden tax for cross-border commerce. So as Wall Street is starting to understand, this is one of the greatest profit-making endeavors in history. You are taking fiat currency from the largest national governments of the world, and you're packaging it in a better, smarter way and capturing all that VIG that these other entities were before. And you can do it at scale with virtually no people. It's a magnificent business. The greatest fuck up in, I would say, in the last 20 years, maybe in the last 50, but definitely in the last 20 years, globally in companies. So the single biggest fuck up, I would say, was Facebook not pushing forward with its Libra stablecoin.
Yeah.
It had the largest collection of consumers on earth. 2.5 billion people were registered Facebook users, and it had obvious ways for those people, like Facebook Marketplace, to be conducting commerce. And so to give humanity, what is that? Like a 30% of all humans, to give them a fungible currency that they could now use anywhere on the Facebook platform. It was extraordinary, the potential there. It would have been the biggest stablecoin on earth.
And honestly, maybe the most widely adopted cryptocurrency. Certainly.
Yeah. And what you see is, no one can be perfect, but this was the biggest blind spot I've ever seen, given the opportunity that a CEO had, and that was Zuckerberg. Yeah. Zuckerberg had these little minions working away for 1.5 years on this thing called the stablecoin, their Libra project. And I'm assuming maybe he got briefed on it twice, You
think so?
I think he knew nothing about this thing. I think he could, and I tell you that because I watched him in front of Congress. Remember Congress, what was it, 2022? Mm-hmm. They said, you have to come here. And I remember thinking, God damn it. The first time Congress is taking something about crypto seriously, and in a thing that I care a lot about, which is stablecoins, and they have this guy who knows nothing about them. And so it was so obvious to me that he had been given like some talking points. It was very obvious. And he's sitting there and they're asking him questions, and forget about the fact that he couldn't really, he sounded like he was reading bullet points, but there was no passion behind it.
Yeah.
Because he didn't understand there was $1 trillion of profit he could be getting.
Sure.
And so at the time he was distracted with Meta and metaverse and all this nonsense that's 25 years away. And he missed out on the greatest opportunity to take a great business and now make it like probably the most profitable business on earth. And I'm just, So now you could say, well, he could still do it. I mean, he can, but obviously there will be thousands of stable coins, in the next few years.
So actually, I wanted to ask you about that because we've talked about this on the show, why, a bank would make their own stablecoin, that kind of thing. But you think even companies, et cetera, are going to use them? And I'm curious about the interim though, because like right now, it's just easier to use Tether, to use USDC. Like it would be almost silly for somebody, unless they were Facebook. I feel like maybe Telegram could do it because they're on chain. They've got a network. They don't have the same kind of inroads to maybe the US or policymakers. I don't know. They're
okay, but come on. Amazon offers a stable coin. It's instantly the biggest stable coin in the world. The banks, this is why I find it fascinating. The banks are so torn. So you have this consortium of banks, JP Morgan, B of A, Wells Fargo, Citi. They came out a few weeks ago and said, we're gonna launch a stablecoin. And this was right around the same time that Congress said, we're moving forward with the Genius Act, which is the framework for issuing stablecoins. And so I'm sure those two weren't coincidental.
Sure.
But what JP Morgan and all the other banks of the world have to contend with is the fact that they make a lot of money in FX, and they're already extracting a massive amount of fee income from moving money around. And what is the principal argument for stablecoins? Oh, it's very low transaction costs, and you avoid converting the currencies. So for them, they're going to have to set, depending on how hard they want to push it. And I have a kind of a thought about how they will.
Yeah.
They're sort of like, it's a hated but not uncommon position companies run into when there's a new technology that they know is superior to what they have, but what they have right now are really rich profits. And they know that with this new technology and other people using it, it's going to erode their profit base. But you got to make a decision. Do I jump on this thing anyway and say, yeah, it's going to hurt me in the short term, but otherwise I'm going to be, like this irrelevant fixture? Or, do we sit there and panic? And it took these guys a long time to the banking consortium to say, okay, we're going to go do this. My guess, by the way, it's not going to be a consumer facing thing. I think they might tell you you're using a stablecoin. The one thing they didn't make any reference to is a blockchain. This thing's not going to be on a blockchain. Now they can claim it's on a blockchain. I know all the gimmicks. They can update a batch record of transactions every week to a block, whatever.
Yeah, get some consensus.
Yeah, they'll probably say, no, it's on a blockchain. Really, because when you start saying things like permission blockchain, what I hear is Amazon Web Services, right? You're just a server, right? Yeah. Permission blockchain is just another term for
my
servers.
Database.
Yeah, private database. So we'll see if Zuckerberg does go, I own one of the largest messaging apps. I own one of the best, social media apps, Instagram, and I'm talking about WhatsApp and Instagram. And then, Facebook for, I don't know, the over 50 set, I guess, who uses it now. He could still do a lot with it, but of course his entire team left. And I think it broke into two groups, and each group raised venture capital for their own little thingy. There'll be a lot though. It makes, I I think it makes a ton of sense for any company doing a large amount of consumer transactions, and exclamation point if it's a large amount of consumer transactions and a high percentage of those are cross-border. So like, then you should be either doing your own stablecoin or as an industry doing a stablecoin. Because, I always like to point out to people, do you know how much it costs to create Tether? It costs $400,000, right? Now, you could say, really? Yeah, of course, if I had to invent the concept of a Bitcoin and a blockchain, and that would have taken, a lot of money.
Right.
But, we all stand on the shoulders of these people who came before us. And so the beautiful thing about the open source movement is it enabled crypto, and it allows us to create things incredibly cheaply. And so I'm sure JP Morgan and its group have spent more than that, but they're not hard things to build.
Sure. I mean, I'm with you. If you're, go ahead.
What's interesting about this too is the difference between, William, if I draw us back to another one of our conversations we've had in the past about gaming specifically, and how incumbents would, as you said, not be the ones to be the innovators. This is a very different situation, because you don't necessarily need any innovation to do a stablecoin at this point. You would be looking for someone with deep pockets, infrastructure, and resources, and then that would become the thing that props up like the more successful. I mean, how much more innovative, this is a real question for you, by the way, how much more innovative do you think one could get with a stablecoin without it getting hokey or, like gimmicky, like?
I would put it this way. A stablecoin is like, it's like, how many ways can you innovate water? Well, water doesn't really change chemically, but you could package it differently.
Sure.
But fundamentally, the stablecoins they're already perfect, right? They're just perfect. You just put this software envelope around any kind of currency, and now you can do all these wonderful things with it, including know with certainty at no cost that the thing's authentic, even if it comes from an anonymous source. Like, that's really powerful, and that makes so it's hard to improve on that. It's hard to improve on it. But when I get pitched, 3 times a week on, we have a new stablecoin.
It's hot right now.
Right. And it's generally
it's
like,
$2.
I'm like, okay, I hate to ask, but fuck, how are you going to differentiate? Right. And I already know the answer. It's always like, well, do you know that the largest stablecoins don't provide a yield? Wow, dude, that's deep insight. Is that right? Yeah. Do you know why they don't provide any yield? Usually they say no, because they don't fucking have to. Because they don't have to.
Yeah.
You will need to provide a yield. And by the way, as a venture capitalist, this is something I really push on entrepreneurs, which is, when you come to a VC and you say, there's nothing wrong with the imitation game, right? Like, in fact, that's often, I'd rather be a successful imitator than an original failure, right?
Yeah,
So nothing wrong with being doing imitation, but when you come to me and say, hey, you see this thing, it makes shit tons of money, and it is whatever the product is, it's really valuable and customers love it, I'm going to offer the same thing at half the price. And it's like, so that's your value prop, right? You're going to cut the price. That's not a good strategy, because we VCs don't want to be in that game, because then someone else is going to come and say, oh, I'll cut half the price from that, and blah, blah, blah. And then it's a race to the bottom. So all these guys starting out are saying, I just learned about stablecoins, we're going to offer a yield. What makes Tether in particular the most valuable stablecoin on earth is very simply that it is the principal trading pair with every important, or irrelevant crypto traded on exchanges globally. Every single crypto that's, in the top 500, its number one trading pair is that crypto against Tether. Go on any exchange, right? It's always that crypto Tether. What's would be news to your audience, I think, is like back when you traded cryptos, you traded them for Bitcoin and then somewhat Ethereum, right? But and anybody who's a trader understands when both sides of the trade are moving in comparison to your index, which let's say we're all indexed, I think, to US dollars, you have no freaking idea if you made profit or loss. You have more of this token than you did at the beginning of the day, but the value of that token dropped. So did you actually make money, right? So you can't arbitrage unless you have one side of the trade stable. And that, so for anyone listening, if you want to do a stable coin, it's not impossible, but here's what you have to do. You have to convince all of the exchanges to take your stable coin and match it, pair it with every single important asset being traded on that exchange. And without that exchange knowing if anyone ever wants your stable coin, it's a very hard thing at this point. Maybe like something like the US government could have a stable coin and exchanges would carry it, maybe, but I almost feel like there's going to be crypto and it's going to be dominated by the existing stable coins for the next foreseeable future. And then in the real world, every single payment processor is going to have its own stable coin. I mean, PayPal's already got its, Stripe has its, and so forth. So, and for the here's the real question I have with the banks. I would love if I was on Congress to ask these bankers. So, you grifted off of all of these innovators in crypto, you're total grifters. You would never give Tether a bank account or USDC. And now you're just copying them. And tell us how consumers benefit, because I don't believe there will be any reduction in fees. I'm so confident they will not reduce fees, because what I think they're really going to do is replace the SWIFT network. And for your audience, that's the network that banks are interconnected to that allows them to do all of these settlements between each other.
It's the real current settlement layer.
Right. Mm-hmm. And it's like the automated ACH, the automated clearinghouse, which fun fact, when my venture fund was the first institutional investor in PayPal, and we had to challenge and almost sue the banks because the automatic clearinghouse, some of you guys have heard about it, ACH, which is how a lot of debit payments get done, that had a permission from the US government to be a monopoly provider, because the banks came together and said, look, if we make a co-op, it's not a profitable, it's not a for-profit enterprise, it's a co-op. We're all going to settle through this thing that we put together. If we don't do that, this thing's going to be a big, greedy public company and it's going to take a lot. So it's going to be a co-op. But it's also, we're obviously, there could be antitrust issues. And Congress said, there's no problem, you can do it, but anybody who meets minimum requirements should be allowed to use it. And at the time, an internet it was impossible to, this is in the 90s, it was virtually impossible to use a credit card on the internet. When we were starting all these e-commerce companies, it was like eToys and cooking.com, all these things. It was about 14% of the transaction that we paid the credit card company because we were in this risky category called internet. Yeah. At that time, PayPal started, it was completing the transaction for 0.7 of 1 penny. So you can see, and that's because it got the co-op price. And man, the banks did not like it. They're like, you can't use it. But it was like, eventually they had to agree. And so banks don't like giving you very cheap fees, right? And it's very profitable for them to move your money. And most people, anyone in the consumer space understands this. Consumers bitch all the time about fees, but you know what? They freaking pay them.
Yeah.
Consumers pay endless fees. For whatever reason, they just have no problem with fees. They bitch, but they pay them. And banks love that. They could cut virtually all the currency moving fees in America if they used a stable coin, but they won't. I don't believe anyway they will. I think Congress should say to them, if you're not going to have any expenses, why don't you pass that on? And this is why, by the way, Alex, this is why businesses are going to start creating their own stable coins, because they're going to say, if you're not going to give us a break, we'll just build our own.
Just out of curiosity the other day, and this is very superficial, like you don't even have to go deep at all to come up with these numbers, but I was just curious about, pick one thing that has exorbitant fees that we love to complain about, and there are a gajillion options to circumvent all of these fees, and it was Western Union, specifically, even with just like pick one country and take the remittance volume that goes to that one country, and then how much money Western Union makes every year. And I don't remember all the numbers exactly off the top of my head, but they made billions of dollars.
Yeah.
And they did not process that many transactions.
Yeah, the global remittance market. Now, this was a big deal to crypto people like 10 years ago.
Exactly.
10 years ago, it was about, I think, 60 million in fees, 600 billion in volume. It was something like that. And which is, that's nothing to sneeze at.
Sure.
But that's why like companies like TransferWise became popular, because, they're like, we don't charge you fees, but guys, it's like Robinhood. When a frickin' for-profit company tells you there's no fees, can you simply ask yourself, how then do you make money unless you're a not-for-profit? Mm-hmm. We learned how Robinhood did it. They get a piece of your trade by giving someone else an ability to front run you. That's how Robinhood does it. Okay. So you save $9 in your stupid trade and you pay $900 more because that stock went up. TransferWise says, oh, we don't charge any fees. We need to always separate stipulated fees from embedded fees, right? So the stipulated fee is 2.3% transaction fee, whatever. But the embedded fee is the currency conversion.
And it's so for reference too, for context, today, and actually not even today, last year, global remittance volume was almost $1 trillion. It was over
it's gone up a lot. Wow.
It's
basically
over
doubled in 10 years.
Yeah, it was
which makes sense.
905 billion last year. But even just Western Union, because obviously they don't process 100% of global remittances. I think I ran like some vague calculations, assuming like on the higher end of gas costs for a myriad of different blockchain networks. And, like with the number of transactions that Western Union processed to make $14.2 billion last year, and how many million transactions there were, it would have cost, like in some instances, as low as $2,000 to run that many transactions through a blockchain.
On-chain.
Yeah. And so to your point, William, it's funny because the technology and the rails and the ability to run it like that exists right now.
Absolutely.
And it has for years. Like this is not new. It's not like it just came out last week. So it's like,
the movement of money is, even for people who are business people who move a lot of money, I would say it is strangely one of the most opaque, misunderstood areas of capitalism. I routinely talk to people about it, and I'm shocked at the level of ignorance. Most people still think when they They PayPal somebody that somebody is sending money. No money is ever
They're
getting
actually
sent when
moving
that
money.
happens. Like there's a little ledger being updated somewhere. No, if somebody wires you $100,000, unless you're a company with a balance of $1 million and the person who wired you the 100,000 is a known business and they've been doing that every month, you're never going to have access to that money. Liquidity is a huge part of the story for stablecoins. The fact that the banks will be able to give you instant liquidity. I can't tell you what a hard on that gives people on Wall Street. Instant settlement. That's amazing. There is still in 2025, there's nobody who can transfer money cross-border and give you instant settlement except crypto. And so if the banks do this JP Morgan consortium, they do it, I think the market that they should be going after will be like the repo market, if you guys are familiar with this. So the repo market do you guys know what that is?
I mean, repossession of stuff, like when somebody defaults on a loan or something, right?
So in the finance world, it's the largest lending market globally. Okay. And I like to think of it as it's like the world's greatest pawn shop. So every single day, at the end of the day, banks have to hold a certain amount of reserve capital globally. And they also have obligations that they have to give, whatever. There's this backstop you can get, which is the Federal Reserve. If you're really in a shit position, you can go to the Federal Reserve if you're a US bank and say, we screwed up. Can you give us a short-term loan? But the way it works in everyday in the everyday world, and as I think about it, it is amazing. People don't know this, but it's not like everybody gets, you know how you have to pay somebody some money, but you're not getting paid for 2 days, so you're a little short. That happens to banks every single day. And so what they do is they take a bundle of assets they have, some mortgage-backed securities, some US government loans, whatever, and then they hawk it to another bank that has excess liquidity. And that's called a repo. So, you go and get it stands for repurchase agreement. And then the other side of the transaction is a reverse repo, the lender. And so this is how the world works though, right? But mainly it works that way because there's not settlement intraday, right? Now imagine everything's being done with stable coins. I mean, the whole repo market, which I don't know how big that is, but trillions, multiple trillions, 10 trillion, it's an enormous thing.
Well, listen, the good answer is, Alex, we can
Stall.
And Shirley,
Fact check yourself,
we
brother.
can
You're
Google
close.
it. Did you Google it?
What
Yeah.
what
the
is
answer?
it?
13 trillion.
13 trillion. That is not a small market.
Yeah.
And yeah. So for so long, while everybody was demonizing stable coins, I would talk to Wall Street people and I would share with them this kind of stuff. Like, guys, you're going to have instant liquidity. Banks aren't going to need to kind of be hawking, grandma's watch for $1 million, to make sure the feds don't bust them from having inadequate reserves, blah, blah, blah. And they would be like, it sounds like a fairy tale, right? But it's finally here.
I that's what I was going to ask is, like, when you share this kind of stuff with folks like that, you're on a call with somebody, I'm thinking about what you said about, the pitches you get. I feel like, William, you probably have some really interesting and maybe possibly exasperating conversations sometimes, because you're in a really interesting position, having been through a couple of different waves of innovation. You're somebody who's kind of good at seeing where the future seems to be going and then getting interested in helping push it there. But you are kind of this figure who's shouting on a hilltop, I feel like. And I'm here to listen, man, because I'm like, this guy's built a lot of stuff. He knows what he's talking about. But it must be so frustrating when you're talking with somebody, if you could go to Congress, you'd probably say the same thing and they'd be like, that sounds great and all, but they just like there's no light bulb there.
Yeah, it is like that. Like when we came up with the concept of Tether, I just remember like for months, I just kept stewing on it and saying, wow, here's another great thing about it and another great thing. And you know how often you have to just use it. Yeah. And then as you use something, you say, wow, this shit has a lot of good, utility.
Yeah.
When people would say to me, how can crypto be worth $1 billion or 100 billion? And then it hit $1 trillion, and my statement was always, I think one innovation in crypto justifies $10 trillion of market cap. And that innovation, and that's conservative, that innovation is stablecoins.
Yeah.
Because stablecoins can literally absorb all of the currency conversion tax, which I think is $1 trillion a year, and give it back to the people and back to businesses. And you think, well, what's $1 trillion a year with a 15 PE multiple, right? Okay, that's 15 trillion. That's literally one thing that crypto did. I don't know what the current market cap of, it's like 3.5 trillion, I think, or something, roughly, of all of crypto.
Right.
Yeah.
Around
like
3.
I think, because of, what is it?
3.53.
3.5. So we've got whatever, somewhere between 7 and 12 trillion more that I think just is justified by what we did. And, you guys have been in this game a long time too. Think about it. Stable coins were invented by crypto people, period. We invented it, right?
You invented it. We're just watching, man.
Yeah, but it wouldn't have been any way. It wouldn't have done anything unless people used it.
Right. Unless they believed.
Yes, this community made stablecoins possible. You can float a lot of ideas, but someone has to embrace it. The crypto community embraced Tether and other stablecoins, which now looks like it is going to be the dominant format for money globally. How about giving us some fucking credit, you people you naysayers?
Can't do that. Can't give us any credit. No, can't do that.
I mean, it's wild to me seeing it, and it's been like a slow motion thing because I've been sitting there going like, when are people going to wake up to the unbelievable benefit and power of stablecoins? And it's now kind of there.
I wanted to ask you, William, for a take on the concept of algorithmic stablecoins, just because some of the more spectacular failures that we've seen in that world have been that. So I'm just curious. I honestly have not thought about an algorithmic stablecoin in a long time, and I'm pretty sure if you came up to me and you were like, "Hey, I've got this idea. Here's one. It's an algorithmic stablecoin," I'd be like, "No, dude, I'm good."
Yeah. What do you say when you get pitches for that?
It's
or do you still get pitches for new ones, or have we moved on?
I'm trying to think. Maybe in the last year, somebody mentioned to me, and I just said to him, "Look, no." It's like no. It's like we don't want these things around. They're bad. Even to this day, the word's slowly getting out there, but you guys have heard me say this multiple times. Real stablecoins don't have a peg. Real stablecoins are redeemable for some quantity of value. Tether, it's $1, and they take no position as to what you should pay for it, right? And having no peg, it's like the US dollar, right? It has no peg, right? It's an amazing thing when you have no peg. Talk to any other country's central bank, many of which are pegged to the dollar, right? And see what they do. Those guys are always fretting because if your currency starts getting a lot of pressure and bad guys start to break that peg, at some point you will drain your national treasury of currency to support it, and then it is in free fall because you have decided what you want people to think it's worth. And that's a tough game to play. If you're not the dollar, it's a tough game to play.
What do you think about, Eddie in the comments asked about like a Bitcoin-backed stablecoin or some such like global permissionless backing that had those kind of network effects?
There's the gold ones, you know, you got like, you got
I would say this to you. Remember what a stable, the only area for your audience, the only area they need to focus on when it comes to stablecoins, there's one thing, guys, the collateral backing it up, right? That's the only thing you need to focus on. Everything else doesn't matter, right? So if, you know, when I was in business school, real story, okay. The professor said, like, this bond, it was a bond class, this bond, now he was a little bit more smooth the way he said it, but this bond here is collateralized by like US government backed debt and some like top tier class A real estate, whatever. Now this bond over here was collateralized, and they were both collateralized at $1 billion, was collateralized with $1 billion of the smelliest, slimiest, ugliest looking subordinated debt from rickety companies, blah, blah, blah. But remember, he said the first one backed by $1 billion of value, the second one backed by $1 billion of value. Now, that second one had 100 billion at face value of this debt that had been beaten down because of defaults, whatever, and now had a market value of $1 billion. But it's a market value of $1 billion. And so many people were like, oh, the first bond is worth more. Why? Because it's backed by all these good assets. No, what weighs more? A ton of feathers or a ton of lead, right? So we don't care what the underlying collateral is. It could be a bunch of Ukrainian government bonds, which I assume don't trade at par value anymore. But if they're collateralized, I'd like to see 2x, collateral cushion. So if they're backed by $2 at current value of Ukrainian government bonds for every dollar of face value of the stablecoin, then it's over collateralized. So people, I am puzzled by it, I have to say. So I think I'm missing something because I can sometimes not see that there's some benefit people get out of it. To me, if you say it's backed by $1 of gold, $1 of Bitcoin, $1 of Ukrainian bonds, I don't care. It's like you're backed by adequate collateral. Now, obviously you want a collateral cushion if that thing's moving a lot, but, and for the audience, I mean, you guys, everyone should make their own stablecoin, with MakerDAI, which is super cool, right? You can deposit in the smart contract, whatever the current value requirement is, it moves, but let's say it's $1.50 of Ethereum. And now you can mint $1 stablecoin, a DAI. That's cool. I kind of feel like anybody in the stablecoin business should actually use the MakerDAI system a little and start to get a sense of, oh yeah, there's this collateral, and if it's insufficient, you got to add more. But the problem with
DeFi on DAI back in like 2021, I feel like, and I wouldn't know where to start now, but I'm sure they've probably made it easier because I would give people that homework assignment and give them a video to show them how to do it. It's probably largely the same. Yeah, you put up your collateral and you get your token.
It's largely the same. The only thing you ever had to worry, which is it's like being in risky investments, and you take a margin loan, a loan against your stock.
Sure.
If the stock goes down in value below a certain amount, the investment bank could say, either we're going to sell that stock to pay off the loan, or you need to add more collateral. And MakerDAI works the same way. But Yeah, so we don't really care what the underlying assets are. Like,
That's interesting.
just, you know, I
Well,
take a Bitcoin one? Yeah. Ethereum one? Yeah.
And just to your point too, there was a couple questions about, the standard of over collateralization, and if new issuers of new stablecoins would be willing to adhere to that, and who maybe would you require more convincing or less convincing to get someone to over collateralize. And just, I mean, in my experience from the past, I don't know, 6 or 7 months, like whenever I see a new one, like I'm thinking most recently, the one that I did more reading about was Aave's GHO, which is an over collateralization rate of 270%. And I've just found that to be pretty much the standard, of at least, like you said, 2x, with some even going to excess, depending on what, like you said, depending on what the collateral is. Because I know Aave uses a lot of Aave, so they way overcompensate to
like
cover
that.
the volatility.
Yeah, like, you got to be paying attention, right? Because that thing swings.
Absolutely.
I don't necessarily know why you would use it, but
because they control it.
Yeah,
that would be the reason. The Genius Act stipulates 100% verifiable collateral, right? Just 100. And now keep in mind, to banks, that's a tall order because they're used to having only 10%, right? Because they lend 10 times the collateral, right?
What difference, man.
Right. So they're like, by the way, and this sucks, the banks guaranteed in the next 5 years, they will take that 100% reserve. They're going to knock that shit down to 25, to 20, to 10. Somebody will blow it up. And then you know what the banks will say? It's these crypto people. See, we never should have done it.
Can you just, it's so funny when you put those things juxtaposed, because, most people, I think, that face the numbers that the banks deal with, whether we're talking about collateralization rates or interest rates or fractionalization rates, literally anything. It's just, it sounds fine. Like you said, it sounds shitty, but we do it because it's the norm. And it's because it's the numbers that we've just known forever. And then when you put it next to something that just removes like that one critical piece that keeps fees in place, it's like, it's so silly. Like that was the light bulb moment for me. That was the single biggest light bulb moment for me. Was I was sitting there with my wife and I was looking at my savings account, and I didn't have a lot, but it wasn't insignificant. It was something. And I got my interest payment from USAA, fuck you. And it was just like 20 cents, literally. And I just remember thinking, there's got to be a better way. And then I, started to expand out, and I was kind of accidentally dabbling with Ethereum at the same time because, I was late to the party. It's 2016. And looking at it and found out that there were, in fact, better ways. And that's really what clicked for me. It's just like, Jesus Christ, like I'm sitting here keeping all my money in this thing. And that's when I started to learn about the rate of inflation and debasement.
Yeah.
Squished together, and that magical number that you're just like losing, hemorrhaging every single year. And it's just like, Jesus Christ, like I can't imagine finding out about this and not immediately being like, oh, dude, sign me up for that system. Give me the stablecoin instead,
It's true, but even something as simple as the debasement of currency, right? Which you would think would be very straightforward. Mm-hmm. Of course, it's not. For most people, they will never connect inflation with a reduction in the purchasing power of their money.
Wait a second, though, William, because won't they feel it if, for example, the things are more expensive? And what if, you said this about NFTs a long time ago, that these companies, these incumbents, they would not give you the benefits of the thing. But then there would be startup companies that would recognize the influence, the social capital, the long-term value they could gain by getting your trust, getting elected into power, teaching you what it was, and then giving it to you. Can you see somebody disrupting? You said about all the companies who would use stablecoins. What's to stop somebody like Aave from saying, okay, you know what? We'll share the yield with you. And we will make the bet on just having the biggest pie, because once you get what we want, what we're going to give you,
they do.
Then Circle can't keep up, whoever can't keep up, because their business model will crumble if they give you the yield. The banks.
So specifically about that yield and whatnot, here's my view. that is a sideshow. The yield chasing thing is a sideshow.
Yeah.
Why do you have money in a bank? I don't think anybody has money in a bank to make a return.
Sure.
You have money in a bank because you want a credit card or a debit card. You want to be able to, link your Zelle and your PayPal and Venmo. That's why you want the utility of money movement, and the fact that they
Or
don't
the
charge
security,
you.
the semblance of security.
Yeah, I guess there's some. Yeah, it's a safe way for you to manage digital payments. Like if one bank came along and said, we're going to offer much higher interest rates, the people who would go do that wouldn't necessarily be the broad consumer market that the bank wants. It would just be like, rich people who are like, oh, I can make a little bit more doing that. So that's why I think the whole yield chasing thing that's something that excites crypto people because they're in it to make money. But everybody else probably just wants a convenient, easy way for them to move money.
I say that a lot, actually. I think you're spot on with that, because when someone asks me, because the question we get all the time, okay, I've got so many dollars, I want to buy crypto. What do I buy?
Yeah.
I always say buy a stablecoin. That's it. And like, oh, why would I do that? My number one reason is velocity. The velocity increase to be able to do something if you're interested in crypto. That's the only piece that's missing for me with regards to like the real world. Like if I have the ability to connect a wallet to pay in USDC, my mortgage, my car insurance, my whatever, I would not have a bank account anymore, because there would be no reason to. I get nothing from it except exactly like you just said, the ability to quickly make a payment to someone that I do not have a choice but to pay. State Farm, mortgage broker, whoever the fuck.
I remember the first time I'm at dinner, and it was some large amount, a few $100,000 that I needed to pay somebody, and had my ledger. And, while I'm chit chatting, boom, boom, boom. Okay, I did that. And it was only later where I was like, do you know what madness I would have had to go through with the goddamn bank to pay this entity in another country this money? They would ask me 600 goddamn questions and blah, blah. And I was just like, dude, like once you have the freedom to do what you should be allowed to do with your goddamn money, the idea of working through these pests, these banks, like especially all their goddamn fees.
Seriously.
Right?
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, it's so frustrating to me that try to find a goddamn bank that like has adequate two-factor authentication. That's not a stupid text message.
Yeah.
They all say, oh, we have two-factor. Is it a text or is it like OAuth? Oh, it's text. Yeah, dude, that's not two-factor. All right.
Can you explain for people listening who might not get that? Why is that not such a great thing? It
sucks.
Source.
It's terrible. Don't even think of it as anything. To me, it's the equivalent of locking your door, but leaving the keys in. And I say that because the idea of two-factor is
stealing that.
Yeah, the idea of two-factor is you give your login credentials, username, password, whatever, and then there's a second non-local verification process you have to go through so that you can access or the thing or conduct a transaction. That could be an authenticator on your phone that produces, a unique number. You guys have all seen them. Every 30 seconds, you get a unique number. It's synchronized to the server in that company. And so it knows the guy with that number is the guy who has that phone, and therefore should be the right guy to go in and be authorized. Because of SIM swapping, which is the ability of somebody, usually an employee of a telecom company, to transfer your line to a new phone which will then get the text message. Because of SIM swapping, a text-based two-factor, it doesn't really protect you, because if you've been SIM swapped, the bad guy, and obviously they need something. They need the username login. So they have that. And then once they get that credential, if they've SIM swapped you, they're going to get the special code or whatever it is.
Right.
And so, whereas if you're using an authenticator app that has this unique number on your app, they have to have taken your phone too. And it turns out we generally know immediately that somebody's taken our phone. And bad guys almost never get your physical phone. They just SIM swap you. And there's been so many people, particularly with Coinbase, so many people who have been SIM swapped and then had their Coinbase accounts drained. Yeah. And that's why it's obnoxious to me that all companies dealing with money don't have multiple factors, not just a stupid text.
Hey, William, I have a kind of a random question, but being like such a prominent guy, and especially prominent for like things related to money and crypto, are you like, I don't know, worried at all about the wrench attack? And how do you protect yourself against that kind of thing? Because I don't know, I'm not a rich guy, but I'm public. And everybody knows me from my association with crypto. And I don't know, I see all these stories about people who are like getting kidnapped and like, beat up because someone's like, where's your ledger? Give me the seed phrase, whatever. Like how do people who are targets like that, I read the security forums and stuff, but it always seems to come down to the wrench attack. And I'm like, I don't know, do I got to get some big dogs or something? Do you think about that? And what are you doing about it?
Yeah, I do think about it, and I do things about it.
Well, not that I need you to give away your OPSEC. I just mean like as
I do think about it. I think this problem exists in many different industries.
Totally.
Where there are people who have access to information that others would want to get. And it's a concern. I know a lot of crypto people who are who practice a lot of safety procedures in order to protect themselves. So I just think it's one of those things. It's like you're the, you're the manager who opens up the jewelry store every morning. Like, you got to be careful. And there's probably countries you maybe don't want to travel to. And like, everybody will always say, using your common sense about stuff too. I think because kidnap and ransom is like the worst possible way to make money. I mean, dude, it's so. Now, I'm not talking ransomware, right? Ransomware is great, right? These North Korean guys who are like, I'm going to erase all your records, whatever. Yeah, that's a great way to make money. But like, to kidnap somebody, like, it's a shitty way to make money. So I think most people, it's easier just to go grab a random guy who looks like, he's got a suit off the street, put a gun to his head and go to 5 ATMs and get $3,000. I think that's way easier than coordinating kidnappings.
Sure. Okay, I want to take another pivot too, because you've alluded several times, and you said it before the start of the conversation. We kind of got really into the weeds on stablecoins, but I'd really like to hear some more of your takes on entrepreneurship. And
if there's anyone to get into the weeds on stablecoins with, though,
honestly, truly, you're right about that. But I really do want to hear. I don't know. You mentioned pitches. You still get a lot of pitches. Is that an active part of like what you're doing for work right now? Is reviewing a lot of pitches, probably mostly related to crypto, stablecoins?
Yeah, I guess that's true. I do. I kind of feel I'm trying to rid myself of this, but I kind of feel a certain sense of duty because I'm freaking. Yeah, I'm old, man. I've been around. I've been doing venture for 30 years. There comes a point if you have been dedicated and persevered long enough where you, at some age, 40, 50, 60, 70, I don't know, whatever it is, you will say, I know virtually everything about how to do this. And it doesn't mean I never make a mistake, but it's like, whatever. You ask Roger Federer about how to properly swing a tennis racket. I'm going to assume pretty much everything there is to know the guy knows, right?
You could write a book about it.
Yeah. So I kind of feel like when it comes to startups, how to do them, what the things are the obvious things to avoid, I kind of know them. So when I hear a pitch, I can give perspective that I think is super valuable. And I also have something else that makes it very useful. I don't care if you don't like me, So whereas one of the worst things an entrepreneur, that word wasn't even used 25 years ago. Everyone's a fucking entrepreneur. But when people
what did they say before?
They said, I'm starting a company that's going to make t-shirts. Like No one said I'm an entrepreneur. That literally is a new thing. It's kind of funny. Everyone's a freaking entrepreneur or a DJ, true. Right? One or the other. So,
or both. DJs are entrepreneurs too.
Often. The hyphen DJ thing is really funny, right? Like I see it now virtually every job /DJ. I think
Evan, I want that on a t-shirt. Give me a DJs or entrepreneurs too t-shirt, please.
I think I want people to start introducing me in these podcasts. William Quigley, crypto /DJ.
He's an entrepreneur and a DJ. Welcome to the show.
We're literally going to read you in that way next time.
That would be good. As I look at, I do have a DJ set here, but this literally is just for other people. It's not for me.
Sure it is.
Every time
now the truth comes out.
They come into my place. They're like, dude, you got a DJ set? I'm like, yeah, but actually it's just for people who I honestly don't even know how to turn it on.
Dude, but, from launching Tether to mixing tracks, William Quigley, the hottest new DJ.
Honestly, that's so funny. What I need now is I just imagine myself like coming over for something. I don't know why. Borrow a cup of sugar, and I open the door, and you're just over there scratching a little record, and you're so ashamed, and you take the headphones off. You're like, I wasn't doing anything.
What does make it a little worse is, I'm in Miami, right? So somebody comes to visit me, and probably DJing is a reason 25% of the people who come here, right? So it's like, even you, William, you have fallen victim to this, going to club space. So back to the entrepreneur thing. Yeah. I'm willing to tell people, right? Because venture capitalists who are actually especially when they're younger, they never want to tell the entrepreneur his idea has big problems. And the reason for that is you could make the entrepreneur unhappy. And just in case that deal turns out to be good, maybe you can get in the next round if you were giving him encouragement, which is why I tell most people never ask. It's one of the worst questions you can ask. Do you think this is a good idea? It's a terrible question to ask. I do a whole seminar with the young members of my team on how to do diligence, conduct diligence. And you wouldn't ask questions like, is this a good idea? Is this a good business? It's an unfair question to ask, and you're not going to get the answer you want. So when people come and pitch me, which I pretty much only want to hear about crypto stuff, that is true. I've done a lot, right? I've made, a couple of hundred investments in the crypto area. Probably started or co-founded 30 different companies. So I've got a lot of background in this. And if somebody is thinking of doing something, I would say don't bother asking other people, because who cares, right? If we had asked people what they thought of Tether, people volunteered what they thought of Tether, which was universally, it was a shitty idea. Universally, that was what we heard. Stablecoins make no sense. They're illogical, blah, blah, blah. So there you go, right? If they couldn't figure out that stablecoins were obvious, why would you think they're going to figure out your strange thing is good? And to give some like encouragement to younger people, especially, I know what it's like to feel like you missed like a thing. Like I was like, got out of college in the later 1980s. And the 1980s were just like this go-go Wall Street era. And a lot of people who graduated me felt like, wow, then, you know, Wall Street kind of took a little dip down and we're like, wow, we missed it. All these riches, all this great stuff we missed. And of course, the 1990s made that 1980s Wall Street thing just irrelevant. And so it's sort of one point I would emphasize to especially younger people is the first wave of a technology is what I call like the 10x kind of thing. People use that technology in a familiar way to make a product better, faster, cheaper. They're still doing what they normally do, but now it's better, it's faster, it's cheaper. And that might be worth 10x something else, right? You've created 10x the value that you are contributing because of this thing. Who cares? It's the next wave that's like seismic. That next wave is when people have been noodling around thinking about this technology long enough where they start to think abstractly, and now they start to do stuff that's, this is the test, doing something that could not be done before without that technology, right? So a search engine couldn't exist unless the internet was there, right? So like anytime you have a capability that was impossible with the preceding technologies, you have an opportunity to have near infinite profits because you're going to be the first and no one knows how to compete against you because a new business model is like it's like a new species. No one knows how to think about it. And so I would say for all the people who are like, wow, you know, I missed out on this whole crypto thing, blah, blah, blah. You missed out on the first act because for the most part, it's been derivative, right? First, we took Bitcoin, then we forked a bunch of Bitcoin, we made Dogecoin, whatever. Yeah, we then put a smart contract on a chain, and that's pretty cool. And we're doing all kinds of cool stuff with smart contracts now, but we're going to figure out something else. And that may be worth 100x what you could have gotten if you tried to do something right now with like in the mainstream. For instance, there probably will be at some point a novel stablecoin, but if you're just gonna, you know, oh, my stablecoin is gonna be collateralized by gold and it's gonna offer a yield, I don't know. I guess if you can make a buck at it, do it, but it's not really that transformative.
I think
if you're young,
you say that,
thinking about that.
I just saw a really interesting write-up. Actually, were you just talking about this? Like maybe 2 weeks ago, just about, it was you, wasn't like the amount of time that has transpired in crypto as an industry between great innovations and how it's been a minute.
We talked about this on the morning show. That
we did.
There really hasn't been a big innovation in the last bit.
In like 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
And that's been in my head ever since you said that. It was just because I was trying, because at first when you said that, I was like, dude, there's no way that it's been that long. Because, you know, I'm bombarded and completely inundated with the news in this space. And I just have it in my head that so many things that are tiny and more nuanced are like bigger deals. But like really, when you strip it down to brass tacks, I mean, go figure, you were right about that. And it's been in my head ever since you said that. And I think it's so interesting. And I think the speculation game on like, what could the next big innovation be? Like,
it's like innovation is such a like elastic term, right? I mean, marketing people use it because they've added a color to the lineup of the product, right? So if you can quibble, obviously you can quibble over what is transformative innovation and what is not. And you and I, we could put a list, and I assume the majority of the stuff we would say similar, but there may be some differences. Like, I was trying to think of, is tokenizing staked tokens a la Eigenlayer, was that like a, the equivalent of a smart contract? And I thought, yeah, it's cool. It's like a very good use of tokenization of staking, but it probably doesn't measure up to staking itself as a concept, right?
Yeah.
I
would agree.
We have not done much on the innovation side. I feel like we're getting stale, and there are two possible paths. One could be, this is all this cow has to milk. Like, we have squeezed every last cool thing out of this technology. That's possible. And then the other one is, we've hit this air pocket creatively. All of us are kind of reading the same news, making the same money, and we need somebody to come along who looks at things very differently to say, if you paired this thing and that thing, it would be great. I don't know which one it is, but it gets a little boring. I see all the news you guys do, and I'm always using this filter of like, is it an extra SKU of a product line, smaller packaging, lighter, whatever, or is it transformative and a new capability of a blockchain? I've not seen any new capability of a blockchain in 3 years.
Well, and largely the news is just announcements of a partnership, which are one of my favorite news stories because the joke that I always like to make whenever someone tells me like, well, so-and-so just partnered with so-and-so. I'm like, yeah, actually, I just partnered with Toyota to get myself to work yesterday. Because so many of them are just like, what was the last one, Evan? What was the big one that was really funny because it was just so obviously like so-and-so
somebody was paying someone else. Yeah.
That's what it was. It was the sorry, I'm going to piss somebody off. It was the Zbeck stuff. So there's this Zbeck network, whatever, and I was getting shielded every single day by a ton of people, and the biggest thing was that there was like a Visa MasterCard partnership, and I said, do you mean to tell me that Zbeck is paying them for their services? So like MasterCard got a new client, but they're marketing it as a partnership because like there's so many instances of that, right? Like everyone's partnered with Amazon because they're using AWS. They're paying Amazon for data storage on AWS, saying they're partnered with Amazon.
I'm glad you mentioned
90%
this
of the news.
Because a few years ago, I was sitting there with my team and we had this very same conversation, and it was about payments in particular, because a blockchain had partnered with Alibaba, specifically Alipay. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. Whatever. Remember I don't know if you guys were around when you would announce the forthcoming announcement. Do you guys
We've got a big announcement coming.
Okay,
I
wait.
feel like we still live there.
No,
Right.
it is because I love share. Every time someone does that to me, I always share the meme of Lord Helmet in the speeder in Spaceballs, like preparing to prepare, and then it's what are you always preparing for? Just go, because it's the announcement of the announcement. Preparing to prepare. Yes.
And that your token would pop 3x because you announced that you were going to do an announcement. Well, these guys announced that they were doing this partnership with Alibaba, which was Alipay. Anyway, like 2 weeks, the token spiked. 2 weeks later, it comes out that their merch store, where you could get hats and stuff, was using Alipay for one of the payment options.
Oh my God.
Nice.
Yeah. So
No.
I don't know what I would do as a journalist if I had to listen to the crap people peddle.
Oh my God, I know. Well, sometimes on a slow news day, you can really tell when it's a slow news day because there's so many of those.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's something I wanted to ask you, William, is you talk about like the ideas you've observed, the ideas you've had, worked on, or just heard pitched to you. And I'd be just really curious to know if any just right now stand out as like the best pitch you've ever had, worst pitch you've ever had, or the best idea or pitch you've had or received. And I distinguish those because like you know, man, I could stand at the front of the room and dress in a really nice suit and give you an incredible pitch and say all the right words, but it's not necessarily the best idea. And sometimes those things align. And I'm just curious if any come to mind from.
Let me answer it this way. I mean, I made a lot of investments, so the pitches must have been pretty good, right? But I would say this way. Another thing I teach my teams is the types of pitches I want them to respond to, right? So I believe all great business opportunities come from deep insight about something. And if you don't have deep insight, you may do really well creating an imitation, but it's always going to be second fiddle to the thing that had the great insight.
Right.
And so that's sort of like this, you could call it like the lane I like to go into. It's like when I'm being pitched, what I'm thinking in the back of my mind is, what insight did this person come up with that caused them to like say, I'm going to build this thing? And what I like to hear, like if I was doing a sizzle reel of takes that caused me to say, I think I'm going to make an investment in this, which I've done many times on the first pitch. I don't say that, but I'm listening, and then I hear something and I say, oh, this is probably going into the likely category. And it goes something like this. The entrepreneur will show me like some kind of stylized cut of an industry, right? And it'll show like it's this company has this set of distributors, and they sell these products, and these service providers do services, whatever, however the industry is organized.
Sure, a picture.
So
of it.
they understand the way the industry as is organized. And then they say something, this is when I know it's going to be insightful. They say something along the lines of, have you ever wondered why blank, blank, blank? And then I think, oh, I've never wondered why, but now that you mention it, why do plumbers get fucking $400 an hour or something like that, right?
Sure.
Have you ever wondered why, rental car agreements have this one page? So I deeply like that, because that's somebody who was kind of swimming in this stuff for a long time. And then they noticed something. And in Silicon Valley, what would happen is the kind of middle level product person would go to their boss or their boss's boss and say, hey, you know what? I think, we should do this thing. I think instead of just selling software, with a disc, maybe we should just make it like a per month thing, like a subscription, whatever the thing is. And they've been told, stupid idea, we don't care, blah, blah, blah. Which one of two things happens. They put their head down, or they say, screw this, I'm going to think even more about this. And then when they've been, beat up by a company that didn't want to do something and heard all the rejections by their bosses, and so they've done a lot of thinking, and then they go out and they come to a guy like me, and there's only one other thing that an entrepreneur needs to be able to do then is, and a good VC can help them. Okay, with that insight, with that thing you're going to do that's really needed, how much value can be captured, right? How much value can be captured? What's crazy and beautiful about global digital capitalism is a tiny thing you do can be worth billions of dollars. Yeah. And an example I'll give you in the payment space is Plaid, if you guys are familiar with that.
Yeah, that
right?
connects to banks, etc.
Dude, what was going on there was all of us guys who had multiple companies who always had to, work with somebody at the bank to get some stupid API and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
These guys had the insight to say, fuck, you know what? I bet you there's more than just us who have this problem. And I would have at first blush not believed you could build an entire company around something so simple. But it turns out when you have 5 billion people trying to connect to banks, so that to me makes the best pitch, a pitch where they've learned some insight And then they figured out how much value they could extract from that insight. Those are the best pitches. But they're, one a year. If you're a busy VC, it'd be one a year you would see.
Is that because founders have not spent enough time to really understand problems, or because they don't present it that way?
I don't think it's because they don't present it that way, because that you can solve, right?
If you understood it, you would be able to present it.
Right.
Somehow.
When I incubate stuff, and I did incubate stuff, and they might not have that particular visibility into like this value capture thing, whatever, but working in partnership them, you can say, wait a minute, let's dig a little deeper here. There might be a pony. So I don't think it's that. I think it's because so many entrepreneurs look at like a process, a 10-step process, and they're like, process number 4 is broken. And you're like, yep. And I can fix process number 4. And you're like, yep, I believe you can fix it. And I believe it is broken. But are you aware that you will only capture like a 0.5% of the total value from fixing that? The reason it's not being fixed is because there's no value to be captured there. So you have to have a brain that looks at a value chain and figures out where the extraction points are, where there's massive margin that you can get. That is a super rare entrepreneur. And these entrepreneurs often are, we look at them later on almost like Darth Vaders, because they're so good at figuring out all the vulnerabilities of the system and where they can take, right? But those are the best entrepreneurs. And I think I used to get frustrated when I would talk to people on, whatever we call them, people starting businesses, and I'd be like, wanting them to think this way. And now that I'm old, I'm like, very few people think this way. Like there would be so many people who would come to me with the business idea, and they're like, it's, I built it, I've got customers, people love me. And I'm like, the biggest you can ever be is $100 million business. The biggest you could ever be. And that means I can't take that business public, which means like, I don't know how I'm going to get an exit. That is not typical entrepreneurial thinking. Yeah. But if you would kind of think you could teach that maybe in like a business school or something, but it for whatever reason, it doesn't seem to get taught.
What's interesting is I super recently, very late to the party, I admit it, I was listening to one of Stephen Bartlett's episodes the other day, and he talked about this concept of the blue ocean theory, like in the world of business.
Yeah.
And he was referencing the book, and I was unfamiliar, becoming familiar now. And the statistic that he shared that I was completely unaware of was that statistically, if you manage to occupy the blue ocean, meaning in this sense that you are in a field of one, you're not competing with anyone. The red ocean is where everyone is butting heads, the water is bloody, there's a lot of competition, you are constantly fighting with the other people in your niche. And then in the blue ocean, you're kind of out by yourself, it's peaceful, water's calm, everything's great. Joe Rogan, in the beginning of long form, single host led podcasting, this was the example he gave, was in a blue ocean, and now everyone is competing to catch up to him. And he is still dominating, still number one by a long shot, just because he's been there for so long. And statistically, it was like 10 to 15 years on average that someone who manages to occupy the blue ocean with their business will keep like niche leadership. And I was curious, just especially with your perspective.
That's correct.
In crypto, do you think that same amount of time would still hold? Because I would say that we're seeing, like, Tether is a great example of blue ocean at the time, still the leader. It's been how many years? Because you would think maybe that crypto is like so much more fast paced than anything else, that maybe that time frame would be radically accelerated.
And it would if everybody had access to banking. And, Tether was able to get a bank account. And this should be shocking to your listeners. The fact that billions of dollars accrued to an entity because it could get a bank account. And I used to tell CFOs who would come work for my crypto companies, now they know, but for the first 10 years they didn't. They'd say, well, what's the most important thing? I'd say getting a bank account and maintaining it. Now, these are people who, worked in regular businesses, and they're like, well, my mom opens bank accounts. I mean, my daughter opens, but no, yeah, dude, no, you can't do that in crypto. Getting a bank account, by the way, the only reason Coinbase is where it is, I don't think almost anybody knows this. I do, because I had a company that was doing what Coinbase was initially a Bitcoin buying service. And I had one too. And we were constantly getting our bank accounts shut down. And then Coinbase was able to get, as a test, Silicon Valley Bank to let it have a bank account for like a year as a test. That was it, guys. That is the reason Coinbase made whatever, $100 billion of value. It was the only company in the United States that was acting as a Bitcoin buying service that could maintain a bank account. Think about that.
Yeah,
like,
big moat.
Yeah, like, but it's outrageous. Like we're not supposed to play favorites like that. And I asked the guys at Silicon Valley Bank, I said, why the fuck did you pick them? Oh, we know one of the VCs and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, well, do 2 or do 3. But for whatever reason, and I said to my business partners at the time, they just won because they got a bank account. And it seems crazy. You didn't have to be smart. Everybody wanted Bitcoin, and most people didn't know how to acquire it. And so, you would go online and then eventually an app, but you'd go online, you would go, all they sold was Bitcoin. And, 1%, 2%, 3% transaction fee. But so anything to deal with regulatory restrictions, these rules aren't exactly the same, right? So there was probably less, you needed some insight to know people want to buy Bitcoin, but then you also needed to either bribe somebody or you needed a sugar daddy to give you permission to do something. Historically, VCs have not liked those types of businesses, by the way.
Yeah.
VCs used to hate regulated businesses. It's only been in the last 5 or 6 years where they've been like, oh, we'll go into defense contracting, or, oh, we'll go into fintech. When I want to say prior to the financial crisis, there was maybe 2 or 3 venture capital firms in America that were known for doing fintech. No one else would do them.
That's surprising to me.
That was impossible because they were impossible.
That, though, it's clear.
There was so much red tape.
Ladies and gentlemen, Monsters and Machines, we're at about that time where we've got to wind down. We've got to ride our cats and cows off into the sunrise. But before we do, I want to get a chance to get a final thought from you, from William. And of course, Alex, I want to figure out if you would tell me who's the winner if somebody has an arbitrary amount of points that I determine is appropriate.
WiMAX, yes, the winner of the most rigged game in human history.
Okay, so let me just remind you really quickly. Here's how the points stand. In last place with 1 gwump each is USAA for giving you a shitty interest rate, Alipay for announcing that terrible partnership, and Bitcoiners who don't like building. Play again next time, guys. Third place is me. I have 2 points.
Correct.
And Alex, you're in second place. William, you have won the game tonight with 10 points. And I think a combined total of 20 points for all of us is enough that WiMAX deserves to win a prize. So congratulations, WiMAX.
Sounds good.
Everybody, thank you for playing. William, do you have a final thought for all of our friends back home, or a piece of advice or a question or anything they can do for you since you've been so generous with your time?
I would say keep some exposure to crypto. And something I always tell people, if they listen, they'll do really well. A tiny bit of advice: if you don't feel the need to buy Bitcoin, for instance, immediately, buy it when the fear and greed index drops below 20. I think you'll be very happy with the price you pay. And at some point, it will drop below 20 again. Don't buy it when it's pumping. There are always pullbacks.
Yeah. You know, the classic buy high, sell low rule never works out, does it?
For some reason, you know what I have in front of me here? I have in June 2022 is the Fear and Greed Index. I have a little like screenshot of it that's up on my computer, and it was 8. June 2022, it was 8.
Wow.
And Bitcoin was very low in June 2022, and it would go on to drop to about 15,000, right?
Yeah.
I want to say maybe right around then, actually.
Right.
Yeah.
That sounds about right. Summertime.
Fucking 8. And it's like you couldn't lose. So that's what I would say. You know, like whenever somebody says, when should I buy? I'm just like, I would just look when everyone else is feeling bad and depressed. That's when you buy. That pretty much goes for all stocks too.
Well, certainly not Circle right now. Dude,
I know. Wow.
Man.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Alex, what about you? Have you got a final thought?
This was so fun. If I had a bingo card for things that I thought were going to come out today, finding out that William fucking Quigley is an aspiring Miami DJ was definitely not a square on the card.
I deny that.
But now,
Sure.
I mean, I'm such a big fan of the person I am now that I know that about you.
I'm not sure if your handle is going to be like DJ Venture, DJ DT after USDT. I don't know. We're going to have to come up with that next time.
There's something. I mean, the possibilities are endless. But William, as always, thank you for gracing us with your presence. This was awesome. I'm glad that we got you on After Dark.
Yeah. And you
this was gold.
Were you in the military?
For 10 years, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Alex did search and rescue. He's been underwater. He's been over the water in a helicopter. He's got some good stories.
You mentioned USAA. I love my USAA. So
are you a veteran too?
I was a child of a vet.
Gotcha. Yeah, no.
And dude, they're great. I know that not for savings, but they have the best customer. I'm from Disney, man, where we put customer service up here. USAA, when you call, you're getting an educated vet, like educated. You get on the call, you're like, oh yeah, these guys know what they're doing. When I had my house burned down in LA recently, I had USAA.
I didn't know your house got taken in the fire.
Yeah,
I
it was
am so
in
sorry,
Palisades. It burned down.
Oh,
and but USAA, I had a lot of insurance on my home, so I was fine. But USAA called me.
Wow.
Like 3 days after the thing, they're like, you had a house, blah, blah, blah. Did it burn down? I was like, I don't know, but probably. Okay. I was like, wow, they reached out to me. That's pretty cool.
Seriously. Yeah, it's there's been good and bad for me.
But not on the yield. I get it.
Pretty good luck. Yeah, not on the yield. But I mean, to be fair, it's not advertised as a high yield savings account. Insurance stuff, again, hasn't happened to me. I have not had to grapple with it, but I watched a lot of my friends get absolutely hosed by really crappy insurance policies when Puerto Rico got smoked by the hurricane. A lot of my friends were stationed down there. There's an air station in Aguadilla, and then there's another couple like home ports for cutters down there and stuff like that. But no, I was active for almost 10 years. I did everything that the Coast Guard did. I was maritime law enforcement for a long time, counter drug, and then I switched to navigation, which was basically just scraping bird shit off of lighthouses and fixing buoys, reattaching buoy chains, and then I went from that and I did search and rescue aviation. I was a flight crew, search and rescue flight crew, and a helicopter flight mechanic.
I don't have one on deck, but next time you come on, we'll show you a picture of Alex in the full suit, like hanging out of a helicopter.
That would be
like
cool.
Top Gun. It's pretty cool, man.
Yeah, that is cool. I didn't know that about you, but I'm glad I asked about the USA.
Yeah. Once again, William, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, guys. It was fun.
Absolutely.
It was late night.
Yeah. We'll see you again.
See you.
Take care. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being the very best part of what we do. I've got to say, how great is that? Every time we get William, it's like, we certainly don't mean, for the people who are listening in podcast land, you didn't see this maybe, but usually we're very active in the chat, and I feel bad about the live chat because we've had so many good guests this week. It's been such a stacked week for guests that the chat, you've sort of gotten the short end of the stick. So thank you for being so gracious, especially if you're like, wait, what about my anchor? What about this? What about that? You've got good questions. But when William comes, when the co-founder of Tether comes and tells you how you should build a stablecoin, how can you do anything but just sit and listen, man? You're going to school. Like he said, they don't teach this in business school, so we better pay attention, man.
That's my thing, though. Like, if you're there, dude, there's so many crypto shows that are just like, someone looks at a chart and makes some shit up and tells you that, like, based on my expert analysis that I learned from YouTube last week, this is definitely going to go to whatever. And like, as we talk about something like this whole blue ocean thing, I'm just like, dude, people want, correct me if I'm wrong, but you kind of want something else. I want something else. I want to listen to something else. And the thing that kills me about this industry is that we are literally building a brand new industry that is not even 2 decades old. And you can watch it be built in real time because, like, there's humans that are building it. And what's insane, someone made the comment, dude should be famous. What's insane is that, like, I can call that guy and be like, hey, you helped build the most heavily used cryptocurrency on the face of the earth. You probably have some interesting shit to say. Do you want to come on my fake radio show and talk about it? Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you do that? That's all I want to do. Is just the best minds, the craziest, like, things that people are building, like the people who are actually building it, the humans behind all of this nonsense. Why not? This is the
why
coolest
not?
shit ever.
When he told us, if you were going to do a pitch, I was locked in when he was like telling me that. I really thought that was super concise, helpful. And I, to go next to,
Correct.
I'm going to add no. When he talked about over collateralized stablecoins, he was like, no.
Dude. The fact that we have Aishwary on, we got to send him a clip of himself immortalized now on the soundboard, because
totally. I hope he loves it. I really wanted to bring up when we were talking about stablecoins, I really wanted to mention, Aishwary Gupta said that 42% of micropayments are happening with USDC on Polygon. Like, what's the take? You can't ask William for a short take because he's got a lot of perspective and context, and he's going to take you deep.
Yeah, but
but I feel like that would be a really good conversation to see the two of them together. I bet they could talk.
And I see that would be a cool just to put people who maybe have not sat down together, but, like, especially when you have a combination of minds that are like this old school in the industry, like since the beginning. Just because it's fun to talk about. We look at like an experience, like, buying a crypto on an exchange right now as being somewhat cumbersome, because we've been around for a little bit. There's some friction points, whatever. But, like, back in the day, you just used to, like, send an email and money to, like, an arbitrary address and just, like, hope they sent you Bitcoin.
Back in my day.
Correct.
And so things have changed. And there's just, like, there's so many pieces now that are just crazy. Like you said, like, when is someone going to figure it out? Because I remember, we were just in another country, went to Toronto, and then, of course, the second you cross the border, there's currency exchange stations. There's crazy rates. I remember that. You remember that Uniswap commercial from, like, a few years ago, where it was just, like, the rate of, like, switching, I think it was dollars to euros. Dollars to euros here, here, and here, and then the final one was Uniswap, and it was just,
dude,
like,
I think that was earlier this year. I'm pretty sure it was like a Twitter post.
Nope. They repost. It's been this is years old. This has been around for a minute. You and I covered it, and maybe it seems like it was just yesterday, but don't forget how many years we've been doing this. Because spoiler alert, we've been doing this for years now. But I just the same thought, because I just swapped. Like, we could do it right now in the time that it takes me to finish, like, my final thought for this and help send us off here, I could literally trade dollars for euros and be done. It would cost a penny. You'd get a 1-for-1 swap, and I'd have a tokenized euro. I've done it before. It's that fat. Like, and that's so insanely disruptive. It's not even funny.
Yeah. I mean, seriously disruptive.
$1 trillion industry.
And like he said, the banks won't give it to us. It's tough to get, but I think there will be some. We're about to hit that second wave, and I'm feeling pretty good about it. Our friend Robert Steckler said, since the convention, y'all have been different, and it's a great different. And Water Tiger says, time for you to host a conference. So I don't know, maybe the next meta is gonna in fact be a couple of panels with some of our friends. When we were talking to Coin Market Cap, you were talking to
we just I don't want to say anything yet because it's not for sure, but later this year there's a conference that we're working on being able to do some like panel moderations, and I constantly toss out, if you're hosting a conference and you want someone to you can, dude, put me in, coach. I don't need any prep. I'll just look at me. Look at how much I talk. Put me on stage. I'll talk about whatever you want. It's going to be great.
Yeah, dude.
Evan's going to be better, but like I'll do it too,
And I would love to even do like an unconference where we all get together in a beautiful place. We get our friends, and then if William Quigley happens to be there, he's going to lead a workshop one day because he decides to on here's how you build your own blockchain or whatever. Here's how you spot a good pitch.
Do you remember 2022? North American Bitcoin. We were in Miami, and you went to Solana Shitcoin Week.
Yeah.
And it was like in Wynwood, which is just like this artsy little district. You found this banging vegan sushi restaurant that was awesome.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And you were for an entire week, but it was just like outside because they couldn't get a venue.
They had a venue, but it was much smaller.
It was like
they
a little
had like
amphitheater.
patios and porches. Yeah, and mostly nobody hung out in the theater. There was like a stage, and there were talks, and it was great. But
Amsfar was there, dude.
Hell yeah.
Amsfar
is there. I know Amsfar when he was talking about being a DJ. I know your ears were burning there. He's like, well, we're here now. We can't escape it. It's the DJ tax. We got to think of a good DJ name for William to bring him back in with next time.
Yeah, seriously, I had no clue that was coming. That's fucking hilarious.
That was the funniest thing. I don't think I've laughed that hard on the air in a minute. He's like.
No, just especially because he started off talking shit, and then he's like, "Well, actually, there's a full kit right in front of me."
It's like, what,
dude?
Oh my gosh. Okay, all right. It's that time. We're gonna ride our cats and cows gently into the sunrise. We've given our dogs and ponies a break, but we're gonna be back tomorrow. Tomorrow morning, we've got another great roundup. Listen to this. We got Blake, our friend from Myosin, coming back. I'm gonna talk to him about this and that.
Oh snap!
Right, that's tomorrow, and then Dr. Adam Lowe is joining us, and the Arculus team is joining us too. They're going to be in the TikTok chat, and I've spoken with Zelda, who has done a wonderful job coordinating this, runs the account there, is going to, I hope, come up on stage so that we can see, have our friends, connect with the official account and that kind of thing, and I'm pretty sure we're going to have a little Arculus giveaway. So come back for that. It's going to be a great live show. And before I go, I do have to say, Christina, I'm giving you not just 1 point, but maybe 10 points for what is probably my favorite comment of the evening.
That's at least a couple points.
She said, Evan out here looking like Ginger Spice. Evan looks like Ginger Spice. And that was not why I did it, but I'm not mad about it.
It's a happy accident.
It was a very happy accident.
It's my new favorite sound on the board, by the way. I'm obsessed. The fact that it's in, and I can just see his shit-eating grin when he said it. Yep.
Aishwary, we really love you, man. It's got to go on the soundboard. It had to do it. You're here forever. This is a reminder that the show is powered by Polygon, and it's a place where sponsorship doesn't quite look like commercial reads. Sometimes it looks like you're head of exchanges and payments and real-world assets getting immortalized forever on the soundboard.
Yeah. Sponsor of the Rise Up Morning Show and After Dark. We're not going to read a commercial for you every 20 minutes, but we sure as shit are going to clip a really funny moment and stick it on the soundboard and play it 88,000 times over the next 6 months. Yeah. Sorry.
And
I think one is better than the other, like immeasurably.
Oh, immeasurably. Yeah. This is iconic. So I think there's no other way to end the show but with that. To say that thank you, Polygon, William, all of our friends, wherever you are, whenever you listen, you really are the very best part of what we do. You already know the rest of the spiel. Go check out the resources at the riseupmorningshow.com. Jump in the community. Come back tomorrow. And then if you've got a crypto question and we haven't gotten to it because we've been heavy on guests, hey, it's not because we don't love you. Leave us a comment. We are paying attention. These are our only official accounts, and you can reach us. All that's missing is you. Everybody, please have a good night or a good now, wherever you are, whenever you listen. Stay safe. Be well. Until next time, my friends, rise up.